Fellow Ghanaians, a very good evening to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us here on Upfront on the JoyNews channel. Well, it's the first day of December 2021, and lots of things have been happening in Ghana's parliament. Now, yesterday, the majority group in parliament set aside or reversed the decision to reject the 2022 budget statement through a motion of rescission, and then went ahead to approve the budget. Well, this morning, the minority was also in parliament, and the leader of the minority, Haruna Idrisu, said what the majority engaged in was an illegality because, according to him, the Speaker of Parliament, and this time around, Joe Ose, who is also Member of Parliament for Bekwai, cannot be counted as part of members present. So far as they are concerned, the majority group yesterday engaged in an illegality. Lots of exchanges in Parliament. And this evening, before we get into the discussion for today, let's start by watching what transpired in Parliament when the minority tried in a motion to set aside what they believe was an illegality yesterday.
I recorded the 137, but the one on the budget, there was no any count to tell how many people were here. So, and you decided to run away from your own budget so that you will not be here to raise the issue of head count, so you know exactly how many people. So get this right. Mr. Speaker, I raised this very matter about the confusion in how the minister captured proceedings. And if you listen to me, if you are in the chamber, you would have realized the point that he's making. I made the same point, that portion is inappropriately captured. It's sad that we're not here, so we want to bring us back. And that is why you should have been here. But Mr. Speaker, I've heard arguments about what obtains in the Constitution. And let me make a distinction. Mr. Speaker, you don't need to be a lawyer to understand this. You need to have common sense. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution in the very article that people have been talking about, Article 104, talks about the Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, 104 provides that 104.2 that they are quoting. The Speaker shall have neither an original nor a casting vote. The Speaker, I want to suggest that the Speaker mentioned here is not a deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Article 95 draws a distinction between a Speaker and a Deputy Speaker. The Speaker, and 95 provides there shall be a Speaker of Parliament who shall be elected by members of Parliament from amongst persons who are members of Parliament who are qualified to be elected as members of Parliament. The Speaker shall vacate his post. The Speaker, when you come to 96, it deals with Deputy Speakers. There shall be 2 Deputy Speakers. Mr. Speaker, then 101 says, the Speaker shall preside, not a Speaker, the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, people should be well educated and informed before they make pronouncements. It is about the Speaker and not a Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so we come to 102, which provides that a quorum of Parliament, apart from the person presiding, shall be 1/3 of all members of Parliament. And then 104.2 goes on to provide the Speaker shall have neither an original nor casting vote. The Speaker, I want to suggest to my colleagues that Speaker that's been mentioned is the Speaker elected under the Constitution in Article 95, not a Deputy Speaker. Don't confuse the two. Don't misread and misinterpret the Constitution. This, Mr. Speaker, is the fine line of distinction. Mr. Speaker, he is a speaker, not the speaker.
Order, please. Order.
A deputy speaker is a speaker, not the speaker. That's the distinction. That is the distinction. And I thought people clothing themselves with professorial clothes would understand this basic thing. Mr. Speaker, so if you think anywhere the speaker is mentioned, it should have universal application to envelop the two deputy speakers. Then, Mr. Speaker, let's go to Article 95.5, which provides. 95.5 provides. Mr. Speaker, let me read. 95.5. The Speaker shall receive such salary and allowances, and on his retirement, such retiring allowance as may be determined in accordance with Article 71 of this Constitution. So that should include the deputy speakers. That should include the deputy speakers. That refers to the Speaker. You can't even appreciate this. Mr. Speaker, so let's put that one aside. Because the two deputy speakers don't come under Article 95.5. It is about the Speaker. That's the distinction that you should appreciate. Mr. Speaker, now let me go on to the issues raised by my colleague, the minority leader, because he referred to Order 48. Mr. Speaker, it's already been argued that Order 48 refers to the normal business of doing the normal conduct of business in the House. And I'm happy that the Honorable Muntaka, the Chief Whip for the minority leader, says that apart from the Constitution and the standing orders, we should be guided by practice. And the practice is where Right Honorable Do Ajaho presiding made this distinction in this House, that the rule is that, and I quote him, and that is what was quoted by the Honorable Abu Jinako, and I quote him, December 22nd, 2015. He says, the rule is that where the Constitution...
Right, so that's the Majority Leader, Osei Chairman Sabunsu, and also Member of Parliament for Swame constituency, Osei Chairman Sabunsu, in some heated debate with Member of Parliament for Asawase and the Minority Chief Whip, Mohammed Mubarak Muntaka. And this has been something that has been happening in Parliament. Started on Friday when the majority walked out. Yesterday in Parliament, the minority were not in Parliament. I'm sure you've heard the minority make the point that, well, they had been threatened by the majority that whatever happened, the Speaker, or in this case, the First Deputy Speaker, Joe Osei, who doubles as Member of Parliament for Bekwai, was going to take part in the vote because the law is silent on whether he has a casting vote or not. And so far as he is concerned, he can cast his vote, and according to Member of Parliament for North Tongue, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, they had indicated that the First Deputy Speaker was going to vote and also get the Second Deputy Speaker to sit in a chair so that he could also vote. Now, let's get back and find out what transpired eventually, because the Speaker, after lots of heated debate, had to adjourn sitting for 1 hour.
Honourable members, sitting is suspended for 1 hour.
You are not a speaker. We are waiting for Mr. Speaker to come. He is not a speaker. He's the one who says he's not a speaker, so we treat him as such. He said he is not a speaker. We hear a speaker. We are waiting. You are not a speaker. Don't preside. He shouldn't. Shut up. Shut up.
So these are scenes from Parliament today. After all the debates about whether or not Member of Parliament for Bekwai Joe Asewusu is the Speaker of Parliament. Well, he had indicated that he is not the Speaker of Parliament. Yes, First Deputy Speaker of Parliament, and that generated a lot of controversy. We'll be bringing you what the minority said, shortly, because right after that, the minority addressed the media. The minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, addressing the media there. But right after everything, we're going to get into the conversation. First of all, what this means for our democracy, and going forward, now that the minority says they're going to subject everything to a vote, can we have the Appropriation Act passed before the 31st of December 2021 and thus enable the government to start spending from the 1st of January 2022? We've had minority that say if care is not taken for those of you who are on government payrolls, it could be difficult for you to have your salaries by end of January 2022. So this evening, our focus is on the 2022 budget approval. We're asking that question, are we heading for a financial shutdown? Because the minorities indicated, and this morning, they argued that all of these have happened because the majority did not have the numbers in Parliament. Let's get to the minorities press conference, and then we'll start the conversation with our guests.
That's your contribution for better accountability, and that's your contribution to demand accountability from institutions such as Parliament. A while ago, presiding, a Deputy Speaker of Parliament, who by the construction of our rules, our standing orders, in Order 109, assumes the role of a speaker and is not entitled under Article 102 of the Constitution to be part of a quorum, let alone be part of a voting process. So when you hear that yesterday a budget was approved with concessions only known to a finance minister, not known to the financial policy and budget statement, and not known to the August House of the Parliament of Ghana, how then can we exercise oversight over the purse when we simply don't have information on those concessions? Be as it may, many of the issues we raise on the floor of Parliament from our honorable members, including their own, in contributing to the debate, was to raise matters that are legal, that are constitutional. The Minister of Finance is reminded that he does not come to Parliament under Article 179 on his own authority. He counts on the authority of the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Therefore, he owes us a duty to demonstrate fidelity to the law and fidelity to Parliament as an institution. When you report on Ejapa and say that Parliament granted you approval, and we remind you that the wording is to reflect the resolution which was adopted by Parliament, that rectification must be an unnegotiated matter. Simplicity. You have to correct it. You have no option because you kept the wrong phrase or quote in your budget. We didn't. On Eka Energy, when you say Ejapa, and we serve you notice that today and tomorrow, we in the minority will not accept securitization of mineral resources. Without any security or collateralization, Ghana makes $130 million every year from mineral resources and its accompanying revenue, apart from its contribution to employment and contribution to our gross national product. Anyway, this afternoon press conference is a simple one. It's to remind President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo that the people of Ghana did not vest the governance of this country in his person alone as President of the Republic. They gave him a mandate as executive president to work in tandem for the good of the Ghanaian people with the Parliament of Ghana, making it a hang. Today we have been told that deputy speakers are not speakers. Our standing orders have been set aside. Any of you here, open your standing order and read the definition of speaker. It includes deputy speakers and persons presiding, as is expected of them under Article 102 of the Constitution. When you hear the Constitution, and go to the record, I have used it on the floor of Parliament. When you hear the Constitution say, except otherwise as provided in the Constitution, those of us who understand constitutional law, it operates as a limitation that in the exercise of that authority and mandate, have respect to other provisions of the Constitution. In any case, is it our minority they want to teach Article 104? Go to the record. I, on Thursday, 25th, stated on the floor of Parliament, reminding Speaker Bagbin that tomorrow, Friday, I will invoke Article 104 of the Constitution. At that time, as boastful and arrogant as they have been, they said they will populate it. So today you have seen what population does. The first deputy speaker simply abandoned putting a question on a motion and opted to give a ruling. You don't rule on a motion. The motion was accommodated. The motion was seconded. It was debated. All he needed to do was for the House to decide. But they knew that on their side, their numbers were not enough. It's to remind President Akufo-Addo and the majority leader that majority in Parliament is majority present and voting, not majority outside the presence, the chamber, in the skies. No, members available, present and voting. That is what the Constitution contemplated, even in Article 104. You know, and we took them by surprise, and we'll be taking them by surprise in the coming days. In the coming days, many other motions will come by vote. Many other decisions will come by vote. I have cautioned that we mean well, because the economy of this country certainly should not collapse on any of us, not even on President Nana Akufo-Addo. That cannot be my wish. But he must govern with respect to the law and the Constitution. The first deputy speaker must respect our standing orders and respect the provisions of the Constitution. When I said, except otherwise as provided in the Constitution, if you come and read 104 and it provides, except otherwise as provided in the Constitution, it simply says, respect what is in 102. Otherwise, it has already been provided for on that matter. Therefore, respect it. So, our democracy should not suffer. We will demonstrate that from today, as I said.
Well, so that's what has been happening in Parliament. Later on, the second deputy speaker took the seat and adjourned proceedings to tomorrow. So we'll be following up on whatever has been happening in Parliament. This is Upfront on the JoyNews channel. My name is Winston Amma. When I return after these messages, I'll be introducing my guest to you, and then we find out what is happening in Ghana's Parliament, whether it means well for our democracy, whether it constitutes a deepening of our democracy or a destruction of our young democracy. This is Upfront. We'll be right back. Right, so welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us here on Upfront on the JoyNews channel with me, Winston Amma. This evening, we're privileged to be joined by Dr. Seydou Alidu, who is a political science lecturer at the Department of Political Science of the University of Ghana. He joins us via Zoom, and also former member of Parliament for Tamale Central, former Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Alhaji Innusa Fuseni joining us on the phone. Good evening to you both, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Winston.
Great. So let me start off with you, Dr. Seydou Alidu, and let's look at it from a democracy's point of view. Now, on the 6th of January 2021, when we saw a lot of confusion in Parliament over the election of the Speaker, many had said this should probably be the last time our Parliament would have to go through this sort of chaos. Well, we're beginning to see it again. And today we saw one member, that's the Member of Parliament for Ashaman, Ernest Nogbe, actually going for the Speaker's seat. And you had shouts of, "You are not the Speaker." Of course, Joe Osei had indicated that he is not the Speaker. But from your point of view, what's your assessment of what is happening in Ghana's Parliament, and what do you believe could be the impact on our democracy?
Yeah, thank you to you, Winston, and to your viewers. I think the 8th Parliament is not like any other parliament we have had in the 4th Republic. It is obvious from the very day that the Speaker was elected and the MPs were sworn in, any reasonable, predictable person in politics and political studies will understand that politics in this country is not going to be the same as it used to be in the previous parliament. This is the first time in our history, in the 4th Republic, that we've had a parliament that have equal number of members. So the composition of this 8th Parliament is quite different from all the other parliaments that we've had in the Republic. 137, 137.
Sure.
And one independent. So it is not like any other parliament. And we wouldn't expect that if you have a technically hung parliament, the way of conducting business is going to be the same as it used to be in previous parliament. And second, the election of the Speaker and where the Speaker actually came from was also another indication that things are not going to be business as usual. For the first time in the 4th Republic, we've had a Speaker coming from a political party that is not in government. And for that matter, he's not only an experienced Speaker who understands both the standing orders and the Constitution and the practice and procedure of conducting business, parliamentary business better, but it's also somebody who is very principled. So coming from the opposition political party would suggest that things are not going to be business as usual. But these two conditions, I will have expected, wouldn't have led to the kind of bickering and back and forth and the things that are going on. I was thinking that when we have this kind of parliament, in terms of composition and where the Speaker comes from, the approach is more about consensus building rather than more about what? Arrogance and partisan posturing. If you're going to go by this arrogance and partisan posturing, we are going to ridicule our democracy to the rest of the world. And Ghana has been a star people when it comes to democracy and democratic practice. If this is going to continue, some of these practices we usually see elsewhere in other countries' parliament, and then we laugh over it. But if it's now going to be in our doorstep, it is going to be a serious mockery to our democracy. And I think basically there should be consensus building. There should be more dialogue.
How is this going to worry our democracy? There are also some who have said this is further deepening our democracy, because over the past, like you admit, over the last 28 years, we've always had, the party in government having the Speaker from its party, and so it's business as usual. We've always had some kind of huge majority or a size of the majority that can easily transact business. This is the first time we have a hung parliament, 137 plus the independent making 138. And so this is the time when we're expected to be deepening our democracy, isn't it?
Yes, I agree that a hung parliament can lead to more accountability of the legislature, more accountability of the executive from the legislature. I agree. And I also agree that a hung parliament of the kind that we have in Ghana can lead to better scrutiny of bills and policies that are passed by parliament. And also a parliament of this nature can also lead to a lot of reasoned debates and proper justifications based on logic and evidence. rather than on party sentiments and individual conjectures. But listen, there is something we need to know. Parliament is the house of rules, and most of the decisions and bills and laws are passed by the House of Parliament. So this makes Parliament a very unique political institution out of the several political institutions that we have. In this particular case, one thing is very important: predictability, because the work of Parliament is governed by the standing orders and the 1992 Constitution, and perhaps maybe other international laws and treaties that we have ratified. And because the standing orders and the 1992 Constitution are formal written institutions, there is bound to be predictability. You can predict what is going to, who the speaker is, what the speaker can do, what the speaker cannot do, what number is required for a quorum to be formed for deliberation, what number is required for a quorum to be formed for voting. All those things are predictable. So predictability is very important. When predictability and surprises are not in conformity with the standing orders and the 1992 constitutions, it creates problem. The first problem is that it creates inconsistency. And precedent is very important in the work of political institutions, including the legislature. What you do today is a matter of record. It's captured in the Hansard, and people will refer to it. So consistency is very important. And then the third thing that we have to look at is finality. At a point in time, parliamentary decision must have finality. Maybe when the speaker rules on this, based on all these other things that we have looked at, that is the finality. How does finality help? Finality helps in a lot of our development partners and other institutions that work with the country to know where we are and what can happen and what may not happen. So in terms of predictability, they can say that once the budget is passed, the budget is passed. That is finality. So that international partners and other investors will know when to invest and when not to invest. But once a budget is rejected today, then the next day the budget is passed. And people believe both the rejection and the passage were done maybe in mysterious circumstances without due regard to standing orders or some aspects of standing orders and the Constitution. It creates panic in the global market, it creates panic in the political scene, it creates panic in a lot of things. People become very hesitant to invest because they don't know when the finality is going to come. So, for example, now the minority has also approved the budget without the majority without the minority. Is that going to be the end, or something else is going to happen?
Well, you've seen it today. The minority. Well, you've seen the minority say today that that certainly will not be the end because what the majority did was an illegality. They say that in their case, you had 274 members in Parliament. There was a walkout, and they interpret the walkout to mean they were present but just didn't want to be part of the decision. So their actions were legal, but they're saying this particular action is illegal. Before I bring in Honorable Inusa Fuseni into the discussion, how did you feel when the budget was rejected on Friday?
I thought Parliament was just doing their business. And the minority gave the reasons why they rejected the budget. What was more astonishing to me was the fact that the budget is the most important policy document that can ever come from the government. So to have MPs that are in Parliament on the ticket of the governing party, walking out of a very important decision-making like the budget was what amazes me more than even what the minority did. So I thought that there are a lot of laws. I'm not a lawyer. So every lawyer is giving interpretation to whether what happened was legal or not legal, and what happened even after, whether it was legal or not legal. So I don't want to dabble in that kind of legality.
Yes, but while you don't want to dabble in the legality or otherwise of it, what I want to find out from you.
No, because it is, you see,
I get you, and I'll get to Inusa Fuseni, who is a lawyer, shortly. But when that happened, as a political scientist, did you see that as a great day in our country's democratic path, that a budget had been rejected in Ghana's Fourth Republic?
Yes, I think it was very interesting to me as a political scientist because I've read about the first time a budget was rejected in 1979. I read about it.
1981, yes.
I saw it. Sorry?
1981, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, under Liman's government.
Yes, 1981 under Liman, yes.
Yeah, so I read about it. Then I saw this one. Then I realized that it is not always the case that the majority will always have their way, even if the minority have the majority have their way, even if the minority have their say. And I know that democracy, and then the democracy has come back to stay in this country, and the whole concept of the executive using the legislature as a rubber stamp for their policies will now become a thing of the past. So I was very much enthused by that kind of happening in the Fourth Republic. I never thought that would happen in the Fourth Republic, because since 1992 we've always had the government in power having the majority, and sometimes the minority will walk out and then the majority will still have their way. And things are beginning to change, and that will deepen our democracy. That will place a lot of premium on the decision of the legislature by the executive, and the legislature will no longer be seen as just a rubber stamp as it used to be conceived. Okay. So I think democracy is maturing in this country, as long as we are consistently doing things in the right and legal manner, rather than consistently doing it in an illegal and then wrong manner.
Okay, let me get to Alhaji Nusaf Hussaini. He's been in Parliament before, and yesterday, listening to you talked about listening to you on Top Story. You had said that, well, you were actually researching, and I'm sure by now you're done with your research. Let's start off with, what happened yesterday. The majority set aside, they rescinded that motion which rejected the 2022 budget and went ahead to approve it. At the time, you wanted to do further research and find out whether what they did was legal or not. Have you concluded with your research, and do you now know whether that is legal or illegal?
I'm still on it, but I have arrived at some conclusions,
okay,
which clearly appears to me that what happened yesterday was an aberration on many fronts. The first one is that what happened yesterday was an attempt to challenge the ruling of the Speaker when he ruled that the budget had been rejected. Now, there is a procedure in Parliament that deals with such a matter. When a Speaker's decision is to challenge, you must come by substantive motion. And that motion must be carried by 2/3 majority. So what did the majority do in Parliament? Were they challenging the decision of the Speaker?
They were challenging the motion that rejected the...
There's no motion that rejected the...
They're actually challenging the rejection of the budget.
Yes. So the rejection of the budget can only be pronounced upon by a Speaker.
Yes.
And that becomes a decision of the Speaker.
Was that not a decision of the House?
Got it wrong. So they are saying that, well, the decision of the Speaker is not supported by law or by the numbers in the House. So that's a challenge to the decision of the Speaker. And I'm saying that there is a procedure for that. And it is not Order 52. It is not raising a matter of national importance. You have to go by the specific route that the standing orders provide. That's the first thing that clearly my research has thrown out. Now, I believe that we have to go for Order 52 because of the lower threshold that you pass it by a simple majority. But the reason a matter of national importance is to draw attention of the House, Parliament, to a matter that is happening in the country which is of national importance. So it's presumed from the way the order is couched that Parliament is not seized with the matter, and somebody is invoking that order to make Parliament aware. But what they were seeking to challenge are matters that originated in Parliament. So Parliament is deemed to be aware of those developments. And that is why the specific order which challenges what happened in Parliament must be invoked and not the general order. And it's founded also in law, where there's a specific provision dealing with a matter, you don't rely on the general provision to deal with the matter. Now, so the second thing is The Article 104 talks about those present and voting. And you must read that together, present and voting. Now, if a person is in the house, and in our case, which is on division, where a person who is in the house refuses to vote, he will be counted as not in support of the motion, unless he says that he's abstaining, and then they can record him as abstaining from the vote.
Sure.
But if he keeps quiet and there's a vote, and those who say no outnumber, and it's a voice vote, and those who say no are louder than the yeses, then no matter the fact that he's in the house and probably sitting on the one side of the house, he's deemed to have voted no, because those who voted yes will carry the day. So those present and voting cannot be separated. So a speaker cannot say that, yes, I'm present, but I'm not voting. That is why the speaker is insulated. The office of the speaker is insulated, because those two must go together. So if a right to vote is taken away from the speaker, he cannot be part of the formulation of present and voting.
Well, he's indicated that he's member of parliament for Bekwai.
Mm-hmm.
He is not the Speaker of Parliament. He is first deputy speaker, and so he, as member of parliament for Bekwai, can be present in the House as member of parliament for Bekwai, and not as the Speaker of Parliament. So he sees nothing wrong with it.
No, it is standing orders. I think the order 7, Order 647, defines the speaker to include the deputy speaker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether his attention was not drawn to that. So the standing orders answers him that a speaker includes the deputy speaker. So let me come back to my argument. I'm on the view that because the formulation in 104 is present and voting, if you are present and you are voting, and there is a vote, the vote must be carried by 2/3 majority. Those who are present are those who are to vote. So if you announce yourself as being present, you must be voting. You must be voting. The formulation is not present or voting. That's not a formulation. The formulation is present and voting. So you read, you conjoin the two words, and they give you an impression that those who can only vote, those who can vote, are those present.
So it says
where the law takes away the right of a person to participate in voting, you cannot be deemed to be present and voting.
It says, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution.
Except as otherwise provided.
Matters in Parliament shall be determined by votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of all the members of Parliament present.
Yes.
Now, the
that
at least half of all the members of Parliament present, is he not a member of Parliament?
That formulation, except as otherwise provided, is taking cognizance of the fact that other thresholds have been given in the Constitution. So it's acknowledging the fact that it is not in all cases that you need the presence of those people in Parliament and voting. That is what is certain. It's taken into account in the Constitution. Instances where a lower threshold or a higher threshold is needed.
Okay, so let me just get a clarification here, because it says that except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of all the members of Parliament present. with
Yes.
at least half of all the members present, is
Yes.
he not a member of Parliament too? Because
He's
it says
a member of
all.
Parliament.
It says
He must
all.
be
It
a
says
member
yes.
of
It says
Parliament.
all the members with at least half of all the members of Parliament present.
And voting.
Well, the first part says, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of all the members of Parliament present. And I am asking, the part that says with at least half of all the members of Parliament present, is the Deputy Speaker not a member of Parliament?
When you read the provision in the Constitution, and that particular one, you will come to but one constitution, one conclusion, except as otherwise provided. So taking into account other lower thresholds provided or higher thresholds provided in the Constitution, that has been taken account of in the preambular statement. Now, the second one is that decision making must be by the majority of members of the House present and voting. That's decision making. So if you have the quorum, if you have half of the members present, those voting must be, the majority of those voting will make the decision.
Yes.
That's what it means.
Yes.
Now, so to be present in the House for the purposes of satisfying that provision, your presence must be for the purposes of voting.
That's the understanding we get.
That's what it means.
Okay, that's your point. Because others have also said that the second part that says with at least half of all the members of Parliament present, since he's a member of Parliament and he was present, and half of members of Parliament.
What I'm saying is that
hold on. I'm just making a point of the other side of the conversation, because that's what another school of thought has said, that with at least half of all the members present, that means all the 275 and half of it. And since he is member for Bekwai, he qualifies under the circumstance to be part of the members present.
For what? Present for what?
For a decision to be taken.
Can he take part in the decision?
He says no.
His decision, his presence is discounted.
Yes, but he says...
for the purposes of taking that decision. So his presence cannot be counted for the purposes of satisfying the requirement.
So now that, that decision has been taken, are you saying that the decision was illegal and thus null and void and so does not hold, and thus the previous decision of the 26th of November is that which currently holds?
Well, this is Parliament. So Parliament on yesterday moved a motion to rescind. No matter the irregularities in the motion, until that decision is set aside, and I'm of that view, until that decision is set aside, that becomes the decision of Parliament. And I'm sure all members of Parliament know that. And that is why, even though a lot of noise was made on the decision taken on Friday, the emotional outburst did not operate to revoke the decision or set aside the decision. They had to take steps to set aside the decision. So, and having set aside that decision, there is no longer a decision of the of Friday, which was set aside yesterday. Now, so if members of the minority or members of Parliament want to set aside the decision of yesterday, they have to initiate formal steps to do that.
And talking about formal steps, I'm sure you've been monitoring proceedings today. The minority challenged the Speaker. We have seen, and before we even get to the challenge, now, he's made the point that he is not the Speaker and he sees himself as Member of Parliament. You say based on Order 7 of the Standing Orders of Parliament, once he's presiding, he's the Speaker, right?
Yes, that's what the standing orders say. The person in the chair is the speaker. We don't address him as deputy speaker. Have you heard anyone addressing him as deputy speaker? No. Even in the midst of the heated debate, do you hear anybody address him as the deputy speaker?
He was addressed as Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. Even those who were advocating that he had the authority, rights, responsibilities of a speaker, and that he also could count himself in, still addressed him as Mr. Speaker.
Now, I mean, you've been a member of Parliament. You've been in Parliament since 2006 through a by-election till you left Parliament in 2021. Now, we have a situation on our hands now. We have a hung Parliament. What should Parliament be doing under these circumstances? Because the budget would have to be approved in order to enable the government to spend from 1st January 2022.
My co-panelist, Dr. Sido Ali, has said it in more clearer way. That clearly the figures thrown up by the 2020 elections in terms of representation in Parliament clearly suggest that a new route will have to be taken to do business in the House. Because the minority are sharing in equal strength with the majority in Parliament. And you know, because of our hybrid system of government, at any point in time, when public business is going to be conducted in the House, you might have more minority members in the House than majority members, because the president is obligated to appoint a majority of his ministers from Parliament. And that appointment could take ministers out of jurisdiction of Parliament. And consequently, their unavailability to conduct the business in the House. And so you must take all these things into consideration. I have said this is the time to use backdoor channel for the purposes of resolving the impact. I have suggested that they need to deepen engagement in the leadership of Parliament, both on the minority and the majority side, so that they can build consensus on what policy imperatives ought to be supported for the purposes of the development of this country. I mean, there's one defining thread that runs through members of Parliament and their parties. They profess that they are here or they are there to help develop the country. It's the policy initiatives which are different, and the way of the implementation of those policies are different. But their overriding motive, we are told, is for the purposes of developing this country. And so if they are united in agreeing that they are there to develop the country, they should be able to find a middle course.
And talking about a middle ground, the controversy is on the e-levy. The government says we are prepared to reduce it to 1.5. The minority insists 1%. Shouldn't the minority be accepting the government's offer? There's been a talk of a reduction.
That reveals a bigger problem. And that is also underlies the lack of consultations and consensus building prior to the formulation of the budget. Because if the government had consulted widely and included the minority in their consultation, they would have gotten a fair idea of where the minority stands in the matter of the e-levy and what percentage was acceptable to the minority. And they could then argue publicly that consultations with the minority had revealed that a certain percentage would be acceptable by the people of this country. After all, both the minority and the majority represent the people of this country. And if they build a consensus on the percentage that is acceptable to them, you can infer that that percentage will be acceptable to the people of Ghana. Now, the minority have an issue with the removal of road tolls. And I've heard some say that in the event that the NDC comes back to power, there will be a reintroduction of the road toll. So if the e-levy is the bone of contention and the minority had been consulted, probably they would have advised that since there is no general disapproval on the payment of road tolls, that should not be disturbed, and that could operate to reduce the amount of money that we would pay as an e-levy.
Okay.
So there are many options, many grounds, many opportunities opened for a solid engagement with the minority and with other stakeholders.
All right.
And because the government did not exploit the possibility of engaging with the minority, that is why we are where we are.
Okay.
I see that government is between the rock and the hard place because their policies and programs must be funded. They must be funded from monies raised, loans, grants, tax and non-tax revenue.
All right. Okay.
Now,
Honorable Innocent Foseni, unfortunately, our time is up, but we'll continue with the conversation. Thank you very much for joining us, Honorable Innocent Foseni, Member of Parliament for Tamale Central, former Member of Parliament for Tamale Central, and former Roads Minister, and also to you, Dr. Saidu Alidu, who is a political science lecturer at the University of Ghana. My name is Winston. I'm on behalf of the team. Thank you very much for joining us here on Upfront on the Joy News channel. Catch you tomorrow on the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. Keep watching the Joy News channel.